Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the source material you send us, put it under the microscope, and pull out the knowledge you can actually use. Today, we are diving into the allure and, well, the agony of the remote worker's life.
You know the image. It's everywhere. That sun-drenched cafe in Lisbon, the laptop open next to a cocktail on some beach in Thailand, just constant movement. That's the vision, right? The digital nomad life. Endless freedom.
And it is such a powerful image. It absolutely sells the dream. But the reality, and what our sources really dig into, is that that freedom can become a gilded cage if you can't get the basics right. I mean, you didn't leave the 9 to 5 grind just to spend 14 hours hunched over a tiny desk in a poorly lit hostel trying to balance client deadlines with, crippling jet lag.
Exactly.
Ah.
So our mission today is to move beyond that glamorous lie and give you a functional, structured guide for a balanced remote life. We've synthesized a bunch of psychological studies and real traveler advice to tackle the silent killer of this whole lifestyle, travel fatigue.
And if you don't manage it, the adventure is over long before your visa runs out.
That's the truth. Okay, so first we need to define what we're actually fighting here, because not all tiredness is the same thing. Travel fatigue, it's so much more than just needing a nap. It's a total, all-encompassing exhaustion.
And it's caused by what? Just being on the move too much?
It's from too many days or weeks or even months of constantly operating in a state of high alert. Your nervous system is just always on.
High alert, right. So your brain never really gets to switch off.
Yeah.
The symptoms, once they set in, are pretty unmistakable, aren't they? A profound, deep weariness, a real disengagement from your surroundings.
And what I think is the most telling sign, a total apathy.
Yes, apathy toward the culture, the food, the activities that you traveled thousands of miles to experience. You're just over it.
And this fatigue doesn't just appear out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Our sources point to some core culprits. The first one is obvious, but so many people ignore it. Traveling too fast.
Just jumping from country to country.
Constantly moving, chasing cheap flights, spending maybe 2 nights in a city just to say you've been there. Your system never, ever gets a chance to adapt.
And while you're doing that, the physical essentials just fall apart. Poor sleep is a huge one. You're crossing time zones, sleeping in new beds every few days, dealing with hostile noise.
Then there's the food, the inevitable nutritional spiral.
Oh, yeah. You tell yourself, just one more street snack. But your eating habits just completely deteriorate. You're constantly eating out. You're losing all those essential micronutrients.
Like B vitamins, which are critical.
And you're basically replacing fiber with fried comfort foods.
And that neglect of basic nutrition, that's probably the single biggest lie remote workers tell themselves. They think they can outrun a bad diet because they're active. But when that crash hits, you realize you just can't run on sugar and adrenaline forever.
And for anyone who's a bit more sensitive or maybe more introverted, that constant influx of newness is just exhausting. We're talking about sensory overload.
The traffic noise, the bright city lights, strange smells, constant conversations with the new people.
You start to realize that the traffic noise is just as draining as a fight with a client. It's just more insidious, just wears you down.
But the factor that is maybe the most draining, and one we really need to dig into, is decision fatigue.
Yes. You escape the predictable office life only to find yourself facing this endless, exhausting cascade of micro decisions every single day.
What bus do I take? Where am I eating tonight? Is the street safe? Do I need to learn the phrase for toilet in this country?
One traveler we read about called it the tyranny of the guidebook. I love that.
That tyranny leads to this psychological state called floating. It's paralysis by choice.
You have so much freedom and so many options that you end up doing nothing at all.
Exactly. Because the mental effort to make even one more choice feels unbearable. You spend your whole Saturday scrolling Netflix because deciding to go to the museum just feels too heavy.
So let's clarify those 3 levels of exhaustion, because how you recover really depends on which one you're actually battling.
Right. Good point. So first, there's your common garden variety travel fatigue. This is purely physiological. It's from the immobility on the plane, dehydration, a temporary disruption. If you just feel stiff and sluggish after a long journey but you didn't change time zones, that's probably it.
And that usually resolves pretty quickly.
Yeah, typically in about 24 hours with some rest and a lot of water.
Okay, then you have jet lag disorder.
Now, this is clinical. It's a circadian rhythm sleep-wake disorder. It happens when you rapidly travel across at least 2 time zones, and recovery here is much slower.
The rule of thumb is, what, 1 day per time zone crossed?
That's the estimate, yeah. And remember, moving eastward, where you lose time is often metabolically tougher on your body than moving west.
And then the final level.
Finally, there's true burnout. This is chronic travel fatigue that starts to manifest physically and neurologically. If you ignore the first two, you get here. And you really need to know the early warning signs before your body just pulls the emergency brake on you.
Okay, so what are the red flags to look for?
Neurologically, you wake up and your body's battery is already at 30%. You haven't really slept, you've just paused.
Mhm.
You feel this deep flu-like heaviness or intense muscle aches. Your joints might feel stiff. They might even sound like a bowl of Rice Krispies.
And the sensory issues spike, right? Light feels aggressive, noise is blaring, sometimes even touch can feel highly sensitive.
And critically, brain fog descends. Words take longer to find, thinking clearly feels like wading through water, and you get these sudden, totally inexplicable spikes of anxiety. That combination of symptoms means you are running on empty. You need to stop. Now.
So, okay, we've diagnosed the crash, which is almost always caused by moving too fast. So how do we actually pump the brakes and shift from constantly reacting to these crashes to proactively preventing them?
The answer is applying the principles of slow travel to your work life.
Slow travel. It
Yeah.
emerged from the slow food movement in Italy, right?
That's the one.
Yeah.
And it emphasizes the quality of fewer, more meaningful experiences over just the quantity and volume of them. It's about being present.
And that applies perfectly to the nomad. We're talking about minimizing your travel distance and maximizing the time you spend in a place. It means intentionally eating and shopping locally to really immerse yourself.
The goal is to relax the mind, not just tick boxes on a sightseeing list.
So how do you apply that to remote work specifically?
It means being fundamentally honest with yourself about your travel capacity. You have to factor in trip planning, transit time, and dedicated jet lag recovery days. If you're constantly flitting from one place to the next, you are missing so many opportunities to network, to build a routine.
And just to fully acclimate to your workspace and the community around you.
Exactly. The long-time travelers we looked at all confirm this. Stopping the constant movement is the key. When you factor in the 4 days it can take to truly feel at home in a new place, plus a travel day, a one-week stay, means half your time is just spent in transition. It's not sustainable.
Which is why the ultimate slow solution is the home base.
Yes. The sources strongly recommend staying in one location for 3 or more months. That pause in movement is just non-negotiable for real psychological recovery and for balancing your work demands with actually living like a local.
You stop being a tourist and you start actually experiencing the place.
Right. And a great planning hack to reduce that administrative burden is to look for co-living spaces. These are specifically designed for remote workers. They combine dedicated on-site co-working areas with your lodging, kitchen facilities, meeting rooms.
So that structure reduces the isolation, which is a huge cause of stress for nomads, and it dramatically cuts down on the planning anxiety. Everything's in one place. You don't have to hunt for a quiet cafe with reliable Wi-Fi.
It's built in.
Which brings us to the crucial reminder. Only one thing you have to check.
Always, always confirm that they have fast, dedicated internet before you commit.
It's the golden rule. Okay, let's move from where you are to how you operate day to day. Now, we know you chase this life for freedom, so hearing us say the words strict routine probably makes your skin crawl.
It does sound counterintuitive, I know. But the sources are clear. Structured freedom is the only sustainable kind. You really do need a strict routine for your workday.
You have to set those clear in-office start and end times. It's absolutely critical for your mental health if you feel like your work is portable and your office is everywhere.
You will soon feel like you are always online. And that leads directly back to burnout. You have to define those boundaries.
And the mental load of organizing tasks across different time zones can be crippling. This is where systems aren't just useful. They're necessary anxiety management tools. You have to offload that mental energy.
So using organizational systems like Asana for your task management, Slack for centralized communication, Harvest for time tracking and invoicing, these are essential.
We read about one person who said the moment they implemented Asana, their anxiety dropped by 40%
Wow.
because the mental load of organizing tasks was just gone. The system was holding the stress, not their brain.
I love that idea, using a system to hold your stress. Another great efficiency hack, especially if you struggle with attentional issues, is the Pomodoro method.
Oh, classic. Simple, but so effective.
It really is. 25 minutes of focused work, then a 5-minute break. After 4 of those cycles, you take a longer 30-minute break. It prevents overwhelm and just ensures a sustainable pace.
And since you are crossing borders, you have to master time zones. Clear communication is non-negotiable.
Please use an app like timezone.io to track your global client and coworker times. Never leave the time zone difference up to memory or guesswork. You need external systems to compensate for your constantly shifting reality.
Okay, so let's pivot to recovery. When that fatigue inevitably sets in, what are the immediate, non-negotiable first steps?
First and foremost, immediate rest. This means taking a dedicated nap, getting several early nights to make sure you hit that 7 to 8 hours of functional sleep, and critically, avoiding alcohol.
Right. Alcohol might help you fall asleep, but it fragments your sleep architecture.
It's poison for long-term rest and recovery.
Secondly, you have to fiercely protect your nutrition.
Yes, the generic advice is just eat vegetables, but let's be more specific. You need micronutrients, especially B vitamins. They're essential for your mood and your energy metabolism. Shop at local markets, cook simple meals.
Even if it's just quick lentil or bean dishes.
Exactly, something to ensure that essential fiber and vitamin intake. Your plate is your primary medicine cabinet when you're on the road.
And to break that cycle of constant spontaneity, you need to reintroduce simple routines.
Right, this is about establishing a foundation when the world around you feels chaotic. Create simple daily frameworks. Wake up, coffee, breakfast, dedicated work window, lunch, read, journal, sleep. That simple structure provides a grounding and stability that your brain is craving.
And we absolutely have to talk about the emotional side of recovery, which is guilt management. It is so common to feel guilty for resting.
Oh, it's universal. Feeling guilty for watching Netflix or ordering delivery or just bed rotting with a book instead of seeing that iconic landmark down the street.
You have to recognize that that guilt is totally unnecessary and it's counterproductive. Travel is about the overall arc of your life, not about being on every single minute.
And to manage that guilt, you need to understand the different kinds of rest you're allowed to take.
Let's define them so you can actually use them. First is the rest day.
This is proactive. Zero stimulation. Full recovery is the entire point. You might not even leave your accommodation.
Second, the slow day.
This is manageable. You might run some necessary errands, do some light work, or see one minor low-effort attraction. You're functioning, but your output is intentionally paced and limited.
And finally, the bare minimum day.
This is survival mode. This only happens when you've ignored the need for the first two, you get the one critical task done and absolutely nothing else. But just knowing you have permission to take a bare minimum day?
Can often be the mental trick that lets you take a real rest day instead.
Precisely. Give yourself permission to recover. Before we wrap up, we have to look at a really counterintuitive finding from the sources. It connects all this fatigue back to the corporate world. Specifically, it was a psychological study on business travelers in Malaysia.
And this research completely flips our assumptions about travel stress on its head, doesn't it? The researchers predicted that the people who travel most intensely, the road warriors, would have the highest stress.
But they found the exact opposite.
Wait, really?
They found that more intense business travel was associated with a lower level of perceived stress. And the key mechanism explaining this was burnout.
So what's actually happening there? The study found that the less intensely an individual traveled, the higher the level of burnout they experienced, which then led to higher perceived stress.
It all comes down to a resource divide. Your high-frequency travelers are often in higher positions. They have more control, more resources, and more familiarity with the whole travel ecosystem.
They know the airports, the hotels, the company procedures. The travel is predictable for them.
But the low-frequency travelers, the ones who travel maybe once a quarter or even less, they're highly vulnerable to stress and burnout.
Why is that?
Because they're unfamiliar with complex procedures, they struggle with the conflict between their massive workload and their family demands, like arranging emergency childcare or pet care, and they face all the frustrating follow-up paperwork that regular travelers have learned to navigate efficiently.
So this raises a really powerful question for organizations then.
It does. If you want to promote employee well-being, your interventions shouldn't just target the road warriors who are often quite resilient. Organizations need to target those who travel less intensely.
So we're talking about policies that might lighten their workload after a trip or mandate vacation time right after a long business trip.
Or even offer practical concierge programs, like subsidies for childcare or pet care while they're away. Those things are most critical for mitigating the burnout risk for this vulnerable group. Hashtag is outro.
So this deep dive really gives you a clear blueprint for navigating the road without crashing. The key takeaways for me are structure and self-kindness. Proactive planning is your friend. Stick to a routine. Use those organizational apps to hold your mental stress. And please, slow down your movement.
And remember that spectrum of rest. The rest day for full recovery, the slow day for manageable pacing, and the bare minimum day for when you're just in survival mode. Knowing those distinctions makes managing the inevitable fatigue so much easier.
It truly is a marathon, not a sprint.
And that leads us to our final thought for you to explore. We've established that the greatest barrier to deep recovery is often that feeling of guilt, stemming from this pressure to constantly be doing. So if the underlying motivation for slow tourism and the whole digital nomad lifestyle is to gain authenticity and self-growth by truly connecting with a place and with